These clappers were made from an old cherry tree. I had them make 50 pairs of clappers from the tree, and from those 50 I chose just one pair. You put oil on them, camellia oil. Let them sit for several weeks in a dark place, and then do it again. That's how you get this beautiful color that looks as though you've lacquered them. You also get a really nice sound. As for striking the clappers together, well, there's a cord wrapped around here. It's not wrapped this way for no reason. You splay them like this and then strike them together. For a really nice sound, 3 parts of the strength goes to your left hand and 7 to your right. Here we go.
Nice.
That's the sound.
Melodies lives a man on the shore with no need for more, and he sleeps on the riverside with his silent mind open wide. He hears what they mean, the voices of the stream.
These paintings have been viewed by undoubtedly thousands of people, maybe millions, but they're rarely seen. They're never really analyzed, they're never really contemplated, but they are works of art nonetheless. Someone sat down, planned them, designed them, painted them, and finalized them. To some of you, they might feel off, like they haven't been put into the right context, or there's something very big that's missing from them. And that's because there is. This is all background art for Lego sets. One of the very first things you learn about design, this great, seemingly obvious revelation, is that everything that is not from nature is design. Anything from the most magnificent monument to something as small as a toothpick. Someone somewhere had to sit down, usually sketch out their idea, and develop it. For pretty much every building and every product out there, and the stuff surrounding that product, the packaging and presentation, also had to be designed and developed. Someone had to make something they knew wasn't going to be consciously appreciated by most people, and put the effort and work required to make it presentable, even when a lot of it was going to be covered up. In this case, the art director and illustrator Chris Barrett made these. The reason some of these backgrounds feel off is because they're not really meant to be seen this way. Usually they have a large Lego set in the middle, general set information, piece count, logos, all this other stuff that obscures about 40 to 50% of it. So when you take all this stuff away, when you remove it from its context, the result is this very empty image. They have no people, not even minifigures. There's not even a focal point, really. This feeling I get from looking at them is loneliness, obviously, but also a kind of odd, very slight, unsettling tinge, as if I'm not really supposed to be looking at these, because, well, I'm not really. They're designed to be filled in with something else that gives it life. This feeling I get, and this subject matter, is similar in some ways to a recent surge of semi-viral photo compilations that you may or may not have seen pop up in your recommended. These types of photos, these often low-quality, atmospheric, lonely, nostalgic, and in many ways deeply uncanny images, have gathered a small cult following of sorts. The locations that these photos depict, many have referred to as liminal spaces.
teach me to worry no more.
You said icon. Aren't icons bad? What are icons? What are you talking about? You're making no sense to this iconoclast Anabaptist here.
Yes, well, this is an issue. In the Seventh Ecumenical Council,
Thanks for starting your sentence that way.
the last council where all churches gathered, they discussed this very thing. Is it okay to have pictures of Jesus, first of all, or is that fashioning an idol of God? What they said was this: our icons of Jesus are primarily a theological affirmation of the incarnation, that the God who could not be imaged has been imaged in Christ, and we are testifying to that through these icons.
Yeah, an image of an image.
Yes.
Because that which has become human and entered history is that which we tend to draw paintings about, make carvings about, or picture in some way. If we had cameras, we would take a picture. We're saying that having an image of the image of God just affirms that he was really a part of history and really...
Yes. Two other quick things about that.
Yeah.
Second, the images of other people, saints who died, they said this is a we are testifying about their resurrection, that they are alive. God is not the God of the dead, he's the God of the living, and that we want to represent that we fellowship with these people in the throne room of God every time we worship. And then third, we talk about icons not as painted, but as written, which is an interesting thing to say. The reason we say that is that we write and canonize icons because they are a visual translation of the Bible. And therefore they have standards. You don't just write any Bible you want. You have standards about Bible translations. So too, if you have an illiterate people, how did they know the Bible? Well, they can read it in the icons on the wall. And that these are a canonized translation of Scripture in visual form.
So where, say, our Catholic friends, but also Protestant churches might have stained glass windows that tell the story, and that can date back and be helpful to a people who are illiterate. The Orthodox Church may have stained glass windows, but may also have specific their paintings. Are there ever carvings or statues?
No, they're in the Orthodox Church. They're always painted,
okay.
and there are all these different people around the walls and different aspects of the gospel story itself. So when I walk into the Orthodox Church, what I'm meant to do by this is to say, when we come together, Hebrews 12 says, we have come to Mount Zion, the city of the firstborn, to Jesus himself, and to the spirits of righteous men and women made perfect, and to a myriad of angels. So we're all gathering at the one throne all over the world. We gather to the one throne to worship. And we see these images on the walls to remind us that these are living people at the throne room. And I will even go kiss the icons. We do a lot of crossing ourselves and kissing. And so we kiss the icons. And that can freak people out, except for basically what we're doing. It's an act of affection towards brothers and sisters who are alive, in the same way that I kiss the photograph of my granddaughter on my iPhone. I know I'm not kissing her, but I'm kind of expressing affection for this person who's really alive. And we're saying, since Christ trampled death is not a thing for us anymore. So these are living people in the presence of God, and I'm joining them for worship. I think I'll kiss them, and they're like, well, it was just a picture, but thanks. Because So what would it be like if my granddaughter's watching me on Skype and I kiss the screen? She's aware now of this act of affection, and it's a bit of a window to her, right? That's all we're doing. But it's fun.
Beautiful. So then, hell. What is hell? Who goes there? Why do they go there?
Pipe organs are extremely powerful instruments. They tend to be these massive contraptions that are literally built into the building that they're housed in. They have entire rooms dedicated just to their function and maintenance. They're these monumental, absolutely insane instruments that are capable of just incredible volume. If you've never been in a room and listened to one of these things play, it is a visceral reaction. Because it's not just that they're loud, but they can achieve incredibly low pitches, lower than what humans can hear.
That's the 128 foot, sorry, that's the 64 foot, and I've got a problem with a wall rattling over there, and in actual fact you can probably see that box lid shaking, and so that was the 64, here's the 128. Most unmusical, but great fun.
Some of these pipes are several stories tall. They have a 64-foot pipe in the Atlantic City Convention Center. That's a musical instrument that is 4.5 stories tall.
And you have to remember that this beautiful interior, this is just the control panel for a much larger instrument. The organ itself is over 150 tons of equipment, and it's all located behind the walls in the building. So when you come into the building, you don't see the 150 tons of equipment.
No, mysticism. Let me talk about mysticism, because I think that one of the things that Orthodoxy has preserved by comparison to Roman Catholicism, as well as especially the Protestants, because Roman Catholicism may have some mystical aspects to it, but Roman Catholicism was completely thrown away in the sense of, Protestantism has completely thrown it away by becoming very rationalistic. And becoming very, they focused on the word, they focused on knowledge, they focused on understanding, and that is not enough in the relationship with God, because God is beyond our comprehension. And this is where mysticism comes in, where what is mysticism? Is the way we know that God is present and that God exists without necessarily understanding it. For example, we call the sacraments in the Orthodox Church, we call them mysteria, where the mystical aspect is focused on, or is shown as being the aspect of those sacraments, of those events. What is a sacrament? Which includes Holy Communion and the Eucharist. It includes, say, the blessing of the water. It includes confession. It includes all the sacraments that we know, and sacraments that people don't think they're sacraments, because sometimes we focus on 7, but the Orthodox Church never limited the sacraments to 7, because even the funeral, which is only given to Orthodox Christians, is a sacrament. Even, of course, the great blessing of the water for Epiphany, tonsure of monks and nuns, all these are sacraments. So in a sacrament, God is present in a mystical way that our senses cannot perceive. We can only know through our heart. We can only know through Him touching us in a special way as He is present to change, say, the bread and the wine and make it the body and blood of Christ, to change the water and make it holy water, to change this person and make them a priest in the sacrament of ordination, to change a person, make them a monk or a nun in the sacrament of the kura, the tonsure of the monastics. So mysticism is really at the center of the understanding of who we are and who God is, because God is present in a mystical way throughout our lives. And we emphasize that. I think a good book to read, which gives, in the conversations with the monk, whose name is Maximus in that book, the author of the book, he's asking questions and he's getting answers from the monk. The book called The Mountain of Silence. In that book, you will see the mystical aspects of the church as the monk Maximus describes them. And that is a great book to read for anyone, especially coming from the Protestant world, who wants to understand mysticism in the Orthodox Church. That monk gives a great description of the mystical aspects of Christianity, of Orthodox Christianity, which the others have lost to a great extent.
Yes. It's revelating his next target. Yes, he wants 2 18s for £100,000.
Yeah, I'd love to. I've left my kind of New Age situation. I'm really interested in Orthodox. What? Like, so many different people from so many different angles are coming towards Orthodoxy, which is like, it's really quite fascinating and interesting, right? And then I was talking to my wife, like Orthodoxy means it's the right way to worship, right? There are many ways. Right. Ortho means, straight, right? Doxy means, worship or glory. So it's the right way to glorify God. It's the most accurate way to glorify God. You can glorify God in many ways. They're not, it's not other ways are wrong. But Orthodoxy, the tradition, is the right way to glorify God in a sense. And I think it's an interesting way to think of it.
That could be a fun conversation to talk about. So one of the things I really haven't done in the past, so I've been an artist, and because I haven't been a Christian artist, meaning that I've been a Christian, I've believed in Christ for a long time, but I didn't see let's just take my band Dirt Poor Robins, and I didn't see what we were doing as Christian art, although I think if you tell a good story, or anybody can do this, or Jonathan's done this in some of his videos too, is that you can see the logos in every good story in one way or another. So, I mean, what we were doing was not intentionally, just as a result of how I collect the world through my intuition, was logo-centric. But I haven't discussed it much, but there's this weird thing that's happened to me now, like as I've been moving towards Eastern Orthodoxy, and we can talk about some of the things that motivated me towards this, if you'd like. If you want to steer the conversation that way. So, as I started to move towards it, I just became like so excited to talk about it with everybody, like without trying, and everyone's interested. Like, no one's not. I don't understand. Like, I couldn't imagine 10 years ago me talking about any of the things I'm talking with people and the types of people who are just like, oh yeah, that's really cool. I didn't know that. That was interesting. So one of the things that really got me is, I'm involved in these Protestant churches, and the notion that I couldn't go back in time more than like 300 years for this one church I was in, and I couldn't have found anyone who believed what we believed or was doing what we did. And so I was like, maybe is that an epistemological test for, is this a problem? And I was like, well, let me look into this more. So I start going backwards. And so my education really stopped at the apostles and begins again with Martin Luther. So that was all I knew. I had no idea. Like, I thought that basically the apostles in their dying breaths threw a really long pass to Martin Luther. And, and he brought us into the end zone, into the future. And so as I really went on this quest to, like, what were they doing before? What did people believe? And then getting backwards and getting into things, it was like, oh my gosh, I was expecting to find this very informal, very impromptu way of worship where people were just on fire. It's like might have been the words you used, like they feel like the flame of fire on their head, and that they were just naturally getting together and nobody had to tell them to do anything. They just did all the right things, and their hearts were in the right place, and they were able to survive this persecution just by this informality, like this informal, natural hippie experience or something like that. I had this notion, but when I dug in, I was like, oh my, that's not at all what was going on. Like, they started meeting in the synagogues immediately. There was, there's lots of documentation of, the specific, like, how many times you pray the Lord's Prayer, how many times do we dunk someone when we baptism, what kind of, in baptism, what kind of water, even the veneration of the saints. And then the other kicker was, I'd never thought about it. I'd studied a little bit, like the Nicene Councils and the canonization of the Bible, but just enough for me to feel like pretty good about its authenticity. And then, like, when you get back and you realize, like, so the Orthodox Church could brag like this. They could be like, you're not Orthodox, but you've been reading one of our most popular published books of all time. It's like the Bible. It's like, what do you mean the Bible? It's like, yeah, the people that canonize the Bible that you think is infallible, or like your tradition says is infallible, they were wearing robes and venerating icons and swinging incense. And I was like, what? They were priests and they were bishops. And then it started to make me question everything. Like, yeah, how do you have the authority to start a church, and where does that come from? And they had just, a deeper view of what was happening, and a much richer tradition than I ever imagined. And over time, the more I engaged, the more what I was already doing just felt anemic. And like, I don't want to diss anybody. They're all great people. There was just something. There was something being omitted beyond things that were just like slightly off emphasis. So, that's kind of like that in a nutshell. That's kind of what got me to really dig into it. And then I just had to get over certain obstacles. And some of those things were things I was conditioned to reject. And other things were things that are hard to understand until you're a part of the church for a long time. Mm-hmm. I've been in person going for a year and a half, and some things are finally sinking in, because you have to be there doing it to really understand it. Otherwise, it just sounds alien to the modern world.
Do you go with the kids?
Yeah, my kids love it, I think.
How old are your kids?
So my youngest is 6, my oldest is 16. There's 4 of them total. I got one about turned 13 and another 9. Sorry, my youngest is not 6. I just said that because of 16. I got that stuck in my head. I know he's 7. He's been 7 for a while, and he looks 8. So that was 3. Yeah, 3 oldest are girls, and the youngest is a boy.
And they all go weekly with you?
Yeah, they did not, like, I think they were having fun right away because it felt like Hogwarts for Christians. So, there was something about it, and it's our St. Michael Orthodox Church is so beautiful. It's not like the most beautiful church in the world, but for anything you'd find around the Louisville area, it's you just step right out of time and space to go into the building. And I think that Kate and I, we had zero adaptation. I don't think most people have that experience. We just sit there. They have an incredible choir. We just sat there and cried through the service, and our kids had a blast. And when the kids get bored too, they just start exploring all of the imaging on the walls, and like it's such an experience to see so much of the church's history and the stories and the figures that are in this like I don't even want to use a mythological word for it, but it's something mythological about it that's true at the same time, and you're just engulfed in this image of what's happening. There's something to contemplate everywhere. It's just a super saturated solution of meaning, and it's been a really great experience. I mean, it's a little longer than the kids would probably like, right? But I mean, outside of that, really the whole experience has been really brought us together as family. So that's been awesome.
Yeah, it's such an interesting experience. It's such an organic kind of process. There's people that keep coming in and out, and people get out, and kids are running around, and it just makes it like very serious things happening.
Right. Well, if you're not, but I mean, I don't know if you grew up in it, but I didn't grow up in it, and it's a lot more. There seems to be more symbolism drilled into it than in Catholicism, but they don't just believe things are merely symbols either, right? They're kind of both things. They're real and a symbol at the same time. So, but once you start to learn what's happening in tradition, you realize that at every corner and every turn, like the churches I was involved in before, almost like by comparison, aren't trying to communicate compared to how well refined the divine liturgy is, and how everything, even like, but these things are uncomfortable. When someone sees someone making the sign of the cross, they're like, well, you don't have to do that. And it's like, yeah, but every time we say this name, you want the name to be above every name. It's like, well, I need to tell my body that, I need to tell my mind that. And then what then also they don't realize is like even the symbolism of how you hold your hand to represent the two natures of Christ and the Trinity, and the way and like, so every little thing you're doing and where you're facing and where things are positioned is telling the big story. And for my mind, of course, like it was the first time I ever felt all of me engaged in the church. It wasn't like, well, these people are nice, but they're weird. This is kind of like a low-grade college lecture. This is kind of bad pop music, but I mean, we're just trying our best, and our hearts are what matters. And so, but it was always awkward, and I always felt like there was something wrong with me that I couldn't like just pour my heart into it and do what other people were doing. And lo and behold, there was a place for me in this world. And so far, it's been an incredible experience.
Yeah, and if you want a little window into what Neil's talking about here, I can't have to plug this a little bit. I don't get paid to, but
I just got that in the mail.
Orthodox Christianity in the first century, really, really wonderful book. And it's not for the advanced, it's for those, more kind of advanced, cultivated understanding of Orthodoxy, but those that are coming from it from other religions or denominations, and it doesn't denigrate other denominations. It just kind of talks about the roots of Orthodox Christianity being kind of situated in the first 100 years and in the religion of the apostles. In a sense. It's really wonderful.
Yeah, no, I feel bad too sometimes talking about it, because like to express what I'm understanding, I kind of have to put where I was in a less than ideal light. Right. And I don't want to do that. I just don't know how to get around it either at the same time, because like I maintain a lot of friendships of people that aren't involved in what we're doing. And I understand maybe any level of confusion they have about what I'm involved in too at the same time, because it's not trying to be relevant. And everything we've been told is that your job is to be relevant. But I think there's upside of relevance in the sense that like you want to be understandable to people, you want to go and meet them where they're at. The problem is a lot of what's happening in the world is not for the best reasons. So for us just to go populate those traditions and those practices with Christian lyrics isn't enough. And you can feel it. The art is not great. The art feels like a message forced into a form that has a symbolism of its own that's not working. Like they're not working together. Like even rock and roll, for example. Like I'm a big rock fan. But rock and roll really, like it doesn't work unless it's rebellious in a way. Like unless it's about this individualistic pushing against, going against the flow. and pushing against the system and the man, if you will. And so, like, I mean, there is a type of, you could find a psalm that's kind of got a rock and roll theme to it, right? Every once in a while, but not all of it fits that. And then, so the patterns contradict sometimes. And so I think it's a problem. Relevance has become a problem when you just inhabit these things that were really just designed as a distraction from what things could really be and what kind of beauty they could really point to and how they could really draw the logos into our sights and show us how that's gathering in us. How they these other patterns are kind of substitutionary and distraction. You know, like you could see a drug, like it sometimes could be like a drug. Like a drug is distracting you from your problems or distracting you from something better you can pursue. And so by like inhabiting these lower patterns of music and art, I think that was the wrong place to land. And it's kind of, it's really given Christian art a bad name because, again, they're just trying to deliver a message, these forms that were really meant as a distraction from what I believe was the real thing. And so they see Christian art as a substitution for secular art. And I think that's an absolute backwards way of thinking it. I don't, and when you think of it that way too, you end up with this like inferior product. Like you end up with something that's like Diet Coke, where it's like, sure, you know, this might be safer for your kids to listen to, or you know, this won't make you fat, but it's got a weird aftertaste and very little nutritional value. So we've had a real problem. Christianity, the brand of Christianity, has taken a serious hit due to relevance. Like it's achieved the opposite of what everybody hoped it would do. Instead of just moving on after something glorious and transcendent and epic, it's gotten lower and lower and lower to now it's just moral, therapeutic. I don't even know, like just bad versions of pop. I can't do it. So I've never associated myself with it. I've tried to help. Churches do music, and I've recorded on records like that. But I never wanted that to be my identity, because even when it went great and everybody was happy, there was still something just like, it's like we left something off the table that could have been brought to the table. We didn't have access to it, and we didn't know what was missing, and we didn't know why. And so, but now I feel like when I participate in the Divine Liturgy, and oh my gosh, the musical tradition and the lyric tradition, it's the exact opposite experience. It just kind of creates this wonder and awe about what music can do and what music can be. And that's really hard to do for someone like me who's been doing music for so long. To actually have music move me again is pretty incredible.
Yeah, like when you say relevant, like relevant to whom, right? Like,
yeah.
So it's like, and then I've heard, I think Jonathan maybe touched on this a bit, and I kind of been thinking about this idea is how
and pretend that he could wish himself health on a four-leaf clover.
So this is a good spot. We're further down. It's a little bit damper, unfortunately. I'm getting a bit of a wet bottom, but it's worth it because this is a good, comfortable, apart from that, comfortable place to sit. And you can be seen all around, so I can see, I get a good view, but they can spot me. And if I stay here rather calmly for a while, I'm hoping that they'll come along and see what I'm up to. They like these covered areas because they can't be seen by any buzzards and things flying around. And this is an area which I've seen them before, albeit probably about 8 years ago. But that's a good thing because, as I say, they're nomadic. So the last time I visited this woods was about a year ago, and they were. I've already checked that area, and they're not there.
She tried the last one on, couldn't speak, fell off, and now she just wanders off, thinking nothing at all. Once there was a man,
but it always takes a while. Now the wolves soon know who I am, so that they're not going to be freaked out when they see me. And what I've been doing is trying to make a noise, which I've done previously, and it's this. What I'm doing is I'm hitting my tongue against the bottom of my mouth and making that sound. And I think it sounds a little bit like a drum beat, but it's really just for them to it's just a curious sound. It doesn't travel very well though. But if they're nearby, it might be enough. I'm just keeping, my eyes feel on the perimeter up there, and there's also some dots down there. I just saw one just down there. It's very tempting to follow him, but that wouldn't do any good because he's a scout and he wouldn't lead me back to camp if I chased him. He'd just disappear down a crack and I wouldn't see him for the rest of the day. And he'd alert everybody else to stay at the ground. But he was just down. It's going to take me a moment just to focus in. He went down there. Just better keep quiet actually, because if he does come back again, I'm just going to hold the camera like this, and then if he does come back, I'll try and get a shot. Keep watching up behind me on that ledge. Just focus it. I think I've got the right spot. Hold on. Yeah. Ah. He's just there. Ah, you see? That was a quick glimpse there. Okay. No, he's not there. Oh, sorry about that. He was doing it. Oh, there he is. Okay. Let's there. Ah, well, at least we've got a shot of one. We'll just keep it up there. I was a bit loud there and I was talking. So it's raining. That's slightly irritating. That means they probably won't be coming out again today if this carries on. The sun's coming out over there. I've been here about half an hour. The rain's not as bad as it was, so it might clear up, but it still means that they might have headed back to their holes. So I'm not sure if we'll see anything else today, but if not, I have a plan that I'll implement just before I head off. But I might have to cut it short today, so at least we saw something. This little track up here is definitely used as a route for them, a little pathway up to the level above. And also you can see in there, it's steeper probably than it seems. If I can just get up here, you can see there's a little cave entrance out into the daylight up here as well. So both these would definitely be used by them because it's like a stairway to the level above. So I have a plan, and I think what I'll do is I'll leave some bait at both of those tonight, and we can check that back in the morning. What I usually do is use seeds. I've got that sort of seed, that's a sticking pot.